Hey everyone, here on the Political Chatter, we are going to be doing a 2024 possible GOP primary. So the fight for the nomination, a primary between Republican challengers who are fighting for the Republican nomination to face off against Joe Biden in the general election. So I do think that the GOP field will be crowded, extremely crowded, in 2024. And 2020, the Democratic field in 2020 proves this. There were so many Democratic candidates in 2020 because of how unpopular Donald Trump was among them. Well, Republicans are really hating Biden right now. And because of that, I think there will be a very crowded field. You know, you see anti-Biden stuff all over. I live in a safe blue state, and I see Let's Go Brandon stuff all over, right? So I really do think it would be very crowded. So, but this is the primary. Just to make it more competitive, this is the primary if Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis do not run. Because if Trump ran, I do think Trump would win by a landslide. I think if Trump doesn't run and DeSantis ran, I think DeSantis would win in a landslide. So just to make it a fun video, and I really enjoy making these primary videos, especially if it's more crowded than a 2 or 3 or 4-way race. Let's make it without Trump or DeSantis. So, going to home states, I think home states, for the most part, are going to go to their person. There are, Greg Abbott and Ted Cruz are both from, Y-Maps is weird on my computer. Ted Cruz and Greg Abbott are an example. So Ted Cruz and Greg Abbott are both from Texas. So, that's going to be competitive. But first, actually, let me go through the candidates. So first, we have Texas Senator Ted Cruz. We have Illinois Representative Adam Kinzinger. Then we have the mayor of Miami, Francis Suarez. Then we have the former governor of New Jersey, Christie. Then we have Texas Governor Greg Abbott. We have former Ambassador Nikki Haley from the Trump administration. Then we have former Vice President under Trump, Mike Pence. Then we have New Hampshire Senator Chris Sununu. And then we have Governor-elect of Virginia, Glenn Youngkin. So, going to Adam Kinzinger, I do think he would win his home state of Illinois. And, Francis Suarez, you probably have not heard of him. He's only a mayor. But I really do. Suarez would be I won't say extremely, but I do think he'd be more powerful than people think because he is a likable guy. He is your classic dark horse candidate, very much like Wendell Willkie in 1940. No one really knows who this guy is. Then people have heard of him, and he's a pretty likable guy, so people like him. Then he rises and rises and rises, and his fame spreads more and more. And I really do think Suarez, is going to be potentially more popular than unlikable people like Ted Cruz or Christie, not necessarily likable people like Sununu or Haley, but, unlikable people like Cruz and Christie. So Suarez, do I think he could win his home state of Florida? I do think so. I think he definitely has a shot here, and I think that he can win it. Chris Christie, I will give him his home state of New Jersey because obviously there's going to be some factor of candidates having been dropped out already. But this is if every primary was held on one day, I guess, and all the candidates were still in, if you know what I mean. Going to Glenn Youngkin's home state, I do think Glenn Youngkin would be able to carry his home state of Virginia, and I do think Chris Sununu would win his home state of New Hampshire by a landslide, along with Mike Pence in the state of South Carolina. But in Texas, Cruz versus Abbott, I really do think the competition would be Cruz versus Abbott. But Abbott is going to pull out a win here just because he is the governor, first of all, and he's much, much, much more likable than Ted Cruz, very much so. Alright, and let's start on the west coast. Alaska, down here. Who do I think Alaska would go to? Alaska is a pretty conservative state, but not necessarily like a Trumpian state. I really would see them I think I would see them fitting into that Mike Pence kind of column, maybe Nikki Haley. But I do think that this would be a Mike Pence state. I really do. And we'll point out Adam Kinzinger is going to be the anti-Trump candidate. Adam Kinzinger has repeatedly voted or not supported Trump. He voted to impeach Trump that second time. So Adam Kinzinger really does not like Donald Trump. He will be that anti-Trump candidate, even though many Trumpian Republicans will see Mike Pence as that guy. But he really won't be. It will be Adam Kinzinger. In Hawaii, this is going to be very hard, just because of how crowded this field is. But I see Cyrus really as the guy in a state like Hawaii. I think Cyrus, he's the only Latino or really non-white candidate in this field, and I really do see him connecting with Hawaiian voters. I think he would win in a state like Hawaii. In Washington's pretty hard. I think Cyrus could do well in a state like this. I also think Kissinger will do well in a state like this. But that Trumpian vote, I think some will back Cyrus. But I think others might back people like Youngkin, Sununu, and Haley. So, gosh, this is going to be hard. But Washington, I think I will have to give to Nikki Haley. I think Nikki Haley is going to be very powerful in 2024. She's very likable, and she aligns with Trump, but also doesn't. She did not approve of Trump on many issues. When he is being a total idiot, she called him out on it, So she will really appeal to many of these voters here. In Oregon, I see it's a pretty progressive state, even among Republicans, say that didn't really approve of Trump. I don't think they would go as radical as voting in Adam Kinzinger, but I think it would be kind of like an anti-Trump state in a sense, enough to go to former Vice President Mike Pence. All right, California, I think I will give to, I think it would be a competition between Nikki Haley and Francis Cyrus. Or really Mike Pence. Pretty liberal state. And Haley, I think Kissinger really will be this most liberal candidate, but just because he's only a U.S. representative, not much name recognition. Name recognition will kind of not destroy, but hurt Adam Kissinger's campaign. So I think California would narrowly go to Nikki Haley over people like Pence and Cyrus, but I think Cyrus would definitely come in second. In Nevada, I see this as another Haley state. I do see her doing well in states like this. In Arizona, this map is awful. Alright, in a state like Arizona, Arizona, I think Pence would excel in a state like Arizona, just because Arizona, it's a pretty conservative state, but it also has some liberal Republicans that will turn to Mike Pence, and he has that name recognition to really capture the voters in the state. Going up north to Utah's also hard. I see Pence as a possible winner here. I also see Cruz and Abbott as possible winners here. But I think I will have to give this to Ted. This is hard. I will give this to Ted Cruz. I do think he would narrowly pull out a win here, just because he will be seen as one of the most conservative candidates in this field, and Utah's an extremely conservative state, right? And Idaho, I think would be a Sununu state, because really, he will connect with these northern conservatives, on this north kind of coast, I guess you could call it, not a coast, but north border with Canada. I think he would excel in this area because he really connects with these voters. He comes from the Granite State. He's it's like a hard-working state, New Hampshire with working-class people. I see him connecting with conservative voters in states like Idaho. I also think the same for Montana. Sununu will be very powerful if he wins in 2024, and people really do forget that. But a state like Wyoming, another very conservative state, a very Trump state that I would give to Ted Cruz. In the Dakotas, the Dakotas are pretty hard. South Dakota and North Dakota are very conservative. I think South Dakota would narrowly go to Ted Cruz. In the North Dakota, North Dakota, just because of Mike Pence's name recognition, I guess he can pull out a win here. Maybe. New Mexico and Colorado, not very much Trump states, even among Republicans. I see these states as another Haley versus Pence kind of competition. Gosh. But I do think Kissinger has a shot in these states, you could say. Alright. I'll give Colorado to Haley, but I think New Mexico would have to go to Mike Pence. I think this could be a scenario. Maybe Pence wins both, maybe Haley wins both, but just because of their connection to these voters and name recognition, I think they could be able to pull out wins in these two states, especially saying that these aren't extremely, Trumpian states, if you might call it that. Alright. Oh gosh, this is just awful, this map. In Nebraska is an extremely conservative state. I do think that this would be another state where Pence would excel, Cruz would excel. I think Cruz will win here. Kansas is a pretty liberal state. It went to Biden in 2020 by likely margin. It went to Trump in 2020 by a likely margin. So it's not as conservative as states like Wyoming, South Dakota, Nebraska, Utah, right? So Kansas, it's a Republicans, pretty liberal. Who will it go to? I don't think Cruz. Not Kissinger. He doesn't have a shot in a state like this. He just won't connect with these voters here. It's as simple as that. He's from a city state like Illinois. Suarez, I don't see him connecting with the voters here. He comes from the coast, from Florida, right? Christie is just so weak and unlikable. He just doesn't have a shot in many states. Greg Abbott, I don't see winning here. He's just not likable. Haley has a shot because she is pretty liberal. Mike Pence has a shot because he's going to be one of the more liberal candidates. Sununu, I don't really see connecting with these voters, and Glenn Youngkin hasn't really established himself enough yet to win a state like Kansas. So, that just leaves Haley and Pence, I suppose. I think Pence might just be a little more recognized than Nikki Haley, so I think Kansas would narrowly go to former Vice President Pence. In Oklahoma, I see as a Cruz state. I do. Very conservative state here. In the South is going to be Suarez's territory. He will connect with the minorities down here, and he's really going to turn out Latino voters. And looking back, he does have a shot in Texas, but I still think it would go to Greg Abbott. But Suarez, I think he would do well in states like Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana. I think this would all be Suarez territory. Not North Carolina yet. But Nikki Haley, just because she comes right next door from North Carolina, I think Haley might be able to carry the state of North Carolina. We'll get to all these other states. Really, I can't give any victory to these people yet. West Virginia, very conservative. I think this would be Cruz territory because, remember, he will be seen as the most conservative candidate, the most Trump-like candidate. In Minnesota, it's definitely not behind Trump. This went to Biden by big margins. This state shifted very, very much from 2016 to 2020 in the general election. This might sound kind of crazy, but will Adam Kissinger win? I don't think so, looking back. Remember, Haley and Pence are just going to be more popular, and I think this would be Pence territory. In Iowa, it was a Trump state by likely margin, but I just don't see it going to Cruz just because of how unlikable Ted Cruz is. I think Glenn Youngkin would really connect with these voters because he comes from a pretty rural state, like a very state similar to Iowa, state of Virginia, but he hasn't established himself yet, and I really can't give him the win. And remember, this is the Iowa caucus, one of the first caucuses, but again, I said all these states, the contest will be held on the same day. So who will win here? I will grant Mike Pence victory. I think he really will connect with these voters because he comes from a pretty similar state to Iowa, Indiana. I think he would do well in a state like Iowa. Missouri's more conservative than you think. This could be Cruz territory. This could be Abbott territory. Missouri. I think Pence had a shot, but I really do think Cruz will pull out a win here. Arkansas, I don't see. Arkansas is tough, but I don't see it going to Ted Cruz. Very conservative state. I think Greg Abbott will win here, and that might surprise you. Greg Abbott, I think, would narrowly pull out a win here just because he'll connect with these voters, and this is another southern state. And actually, Louisiana, I think, would go to Greg Abbott as well. I'm going to change that from SARS to Greg Abbott. And in Tennessee, I think would also. I think Tennessee we could give to Greg Abbott, another southern state, because remember, he's from Texas, he's from the Sun Belt. I think, Abbott, he's going to perform best in the South, I do. Kentucky, I don't see going to Greg Abbott. I think this would be more of a Cruz or Pence kind of type, or Haley state. I think I might have to give this to Nikki Haley. I do think, she will connect with these votes just fine. However, Mike Pence comes right next door from Indiana, so I guess this will tilt the state to Mike Pence. Nikki Haley currently leads with 106 votes. In Ohio, a suburban state with many families, parents are going to dominate this. So I don't see it going to Ted Cruz because, remember, parents are not that much conservative. Ohio, I think, could go to Glenn Youngkin, and I think it will because, remember, Glenn Youngkin is going to be, he won the gubernatorial election by saying he will end critical race theory in schools, and that proved to be more popular among parents than anyone thought, even among Democratic parents. Really, in a state that's dominated, the primary that's dominated by parents, I think really that parents really will turn out for Glenn Youngkin. In West Virginia, I'll change from Ted Cruz to Glenn Youngkin because remember, Glenn Youngkin will connect with these voters right here. He comes right next door from Virginia, and that same thing. Parents, they're going to turn out heavily for Glenn Youngkin because of the critical race theory. And I do think that if Glenn Youngkin campaigned, he would campaign in states like Ohio, where there are high numbers of families, right? So I'll give Glenn Youngkin the state of Virginia. In Wisconsin, I think Kissinger has a chance. But I don't think he will win. In Wisconsin, I will give to Nikki Haley because a state that doesn't adore Trump, but they want a pretty conservative candidate because they are generally conservative state. I think Sununu actually would do very well in this state because, another northern, pretty hardworking state. I think Sununu will connect with these voters, but I do ultimately think that Haley will just be a bit more popular. In the state of Michigan, Michigan's hard. Mike Pence's home state borders the state. So, geez, the state is hard. But I guess just because of Mike Pence's name recognition, I guess I'll give Michigan to Mike Pence. But it really is a hard state. I don't know how to categorize that state. D.C., Maryland, and Delaware. In Washington, D.C., I think Mike Pence would win because he is the former vice president, I guess. Don't really know. Maryland, these liberal states where even Republicans are liberal, Mike Pence is going to do well. Nikki Haley is going to do well. Kissinger is going to do well. Forgot about him. He definitely has a shot in these states. And also Sununu will do well in that more northern region because he will really connect with those voters more than anywhere else. But in states like Maryland and Delaware, I see Kissinger as the apparent winner. Maryland elected an anti-Trump Republican as their governor, Larry Hogan. I think Maryland would go to Kissinger. I think Delaware would narrowly go to Kissinger. Connecticut is a bit more conservative, I would say. A lot of conservatives in the state. I think Kissinger would just be too anti-Trump to go to him. I think Mike Pence would win in Connecticut. But Rhode Island, Massachusetts would all be Kissinger territory. We'll get to New York. But Sununu, I think, would win in Maine. He's going to connect with these voters a lot, and I mean a lot. But Kissinger, I think Vermont is too liberal not to go to Kissinger. Yeah, I think Vermont would have to go to Adam Kissinger, sorry. And in New York, let's see. New York, I think, would go to Nikki Haley because I think Nikki Haley would be pretty popular in cities. I do see her doing pretty well in cities, really connecting with women because she's the only woman, competing in this primary. So I think Nikki Haley would win in New York, but Pennsylvania is another state with many, many families where Glenn Youngkin will do well, but I don't think Glenn Youngkin will win, because I don't see him, really connecting with anyone besides parents. Pennsylvania. Suburban moms will dominate this primary in the Pennsylvania primary, and they're going to turn out heavily for Nikki Haley. So I think Nikki Haley will pull out a win in Pennsylvania, granting her the nomination with 165 electoral votes. I know they're electoral votes, but delegates are based off state's population, and also electoral votes are, so we'll play out, pretty much the same. So in first place is Nikki Haley with 165 electoral votes. Mike Pence comes in second with 96 electoral votes. In third place is Francis Suarez with 64 electoral votes, an underdog third place win. In fourth is Greg Abbott with 63, pretty much a surprise. In fifth is Kissinger with 51. In sixth is Youngkin with 36, and then Cruz with 34, and Sununu comes in last with 15, and that really surprises me. So make sure to subscribe, like, and comment. Thank you for watching.